Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel and hope you guys are doing great. So in my today's video, I'm going to take you through the results and con call summary of Vintage Coffee and Beverages Limited. We'll understand their result. We'll understand what are the main points from the con call summary. But before we get into that, I'll just tell you in very short what does the business do, right? So they are into manufacturing of this instant coffee where and they mostly export these to US, Europe, Africa, Central America. So that's what their whole business model is, right? And the type of coffees that they make are like sprayed, right, agglomerated coffee, and they make certain parts of instant chicory also, which is used for different other purposes. And in future, or like would I say in this coming year or by end of next year, they're going to get into freeze dried coffee. And that is very important for them. I'll explain to you later in the video. Let's look into their recent numbers of the result, right? So if you look for the Q4 of FY26, they did a growth of almost 57% to 165 crores, and PAT was up by around 34% to 21.01 crores. And if you look for the whole year, the numbers are amazing because the revenue increased by almost 79% to 553 crores, and PAT was up by almost 80% to 72.19 crores. And at the same time, right, the margins also look quite intact because if you look at the Q4 FY26, the EBITDA margin stood at around 18.5% and PAT margin was around 12.7%. And if you look for the whole year, right, the EBITDA margin was around 18% and PAT margin was around 13.1%. So so this is their main numbers. And if you look from the customer concentration perspective, right? So you see, any manufacturer who manufactures any things and sells it, right? They have customers. So we need to look at how many numbers of customers, Vintage Coffee has and what is the concentration. So if you look at the total number of customers that they deal with are around, the number is around 19 to 20. And the top 5 to 6 customers contribute to around 45% of the revenue. So yes, obviously they have a a customer concentration, and I hope in the coming months and years, right, they're able to diversify it and reduce the overall dependency because losing one big customer could have a big impact on the overall revenue. And in terms of the geopolitical issue, right? So the question was asked because if you would have watched my videos earlier, right, all the con calls that I have read through or the results which I've updated, one question which is coming up is, right, what is the impact of this geopolitical issue of the war? You know, on companies. So over here, Vintage Coffee was very clear that they do not see any major impact on that because they do not deal with Middle East much at all. Majority of their export goes to US, Central America, and Europe and Africa side, and they do not see any increase in the raw material prices at all. But one thing that they said, because of what is happening in the Middle East, the raw materials which are used for packaging, their prices have slightly increased. So, but they're saying that they're able to pass this cost on to the customer. So indirectly, I mean directly, if you see, there has been literally no impact for them, and they said their margins would be intact or even improve better in the coming days. And we have to look at their growth plan, right? Because their growth is what they are doing for growth is, I mean, I would say it's literally crazy, and the way they are executing also. If you look for the FY27, right? By March of 2027, they successfully commissioned a new plant where which has added a capacity of around 4,500 metric tons per annum for spray dried and agglomerated coffee. This went live on around 23rd March 2026. Now, this has increased their capacity from earlier 6,500 metric tons per annum to almost 11,000 metric tons per annum. So that is an increase of almost 69%. And all the funding for this, expansion has been done via internal accruals. And the crazy thing which I heard in the con call was, right. They are clearly saying that the demand is already there, and they can see that they'll be able to utilize 95% of this capacity for the whole year. And currently, it's almost running close to full capacity. And the other thing what they said is, right, because over here majority of the production which will be done will be sold into the, how to say, in consumer packs, which yields better margin. So they see that in the selling price they can expect more 2 to 3% of more realization. So that is another good thing. So the capacity is almost, I wouldn't say almost double, but almost increased by around 70%. And if you look for the for FY28, right, what they're doing, right, as I told you, they are entering into this freeze dried coffee, which is much more premium product and has much more better realization compared to the current products from the spray dried coffee and agglomerated coffee that they sell. So over here they are trying to, in the first phase, they're trying to add a capacity of around 5,500 metric tons per annum. And for this they have already secured the land and they have made the payments for all the you know critical machinery which has to be done. So once the construction will be completed by mostly end of FY27, and then for the first 3 months, which is Q1 of FY28, they will have trial run for this whole factory, and then by July of FY28 it will start contributing to the overall revenue. And if you look at this also, right, by adding this 5,500, this will almost increase the capacity for FY28 by another close to around 40 to 50%. And over here, to fund the expansion for freeze-dried coffee, they had raised equity capital. And the management said that in terms of revenue contribution in the first part of in FY28, this plant would contribute to around 70%. It will be utilized around 70%. So it will also start contributing to the overall revenue. And then they have a second phase of this. So once this gets completed and completely up and running and going to provide full benefit by FY29, then for FY29 and 30, they have a second phase of this plan where they're going to add another 5,500 metric tons per annum. So if you look at their overall growth plan, and it's just quite crazy. Already they have increased their capacity from 6,500 to 11,000, which is around 70%. And then in the next, how to say, 2 to 4 years, right? They are going to almost double their capacity from 11,000 to close to 22,000 by adding these, freeze-dried coffee of 11,000 metric ton per annum in two phases of 5,500 metric tons per annum. So the question was asked at the back of this, what is the guidance? So if you look for the FY27, right, with the capacity utilization on this new capacity which went live, right, I can easily say them doing, how to say, a revenue growth of around close to around 60% at the lower side. On the high side, it could go up to around 70 to 80%. And then for FY28 also, obviously the whole 11,000 will provide the revenue, plus at the same time the freeze dried coffee, right, which will almost be utilized at around 70%, will start contributing to the revenue. But we need to understand this, right? This freeze dried coffee will have a much better realization to the current capacity they have for spray dried coffee and agglomerated coffees. So that will also contribute, like almost, I would say, close to increasing the revenue by another 50 to 60%. And for the FY29, when the freeze-dried coffee will be on full capacity utilization, it will again contribute. And then obviously for FY2030, then if everything goes well and the second phase of the freeze-dried coffee will get into production, that will also contribute for the further growth. So if you look for this company, especially, right, their growth is almost planned and they are working in the right direction. What they promised for extra 5,500, they've already delivered it. For the freeze-dried coffee, the land and machinery is already secure and the construction will begin shortly. And and I believe that the way they have executed all the other thing, they'll be able to execute this also. And the growth for this company is going to be great for the next 3 to 4 years. And I believe anyone who's invested in it will have a great return at the back of it. And if you like this analysis, please do hit like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you and God bless you.